Hey friends, it's Melanie of Art Studio 320. This week's project is a sofa table or a couch table. Traditionally it goes behind the couch and now it needs to be refinished. It's in pretty bad shape. It used to be in our living room a long time ago. It is a little dated. As you can see, there's some nice scallops here, but that's really not my style anymore. So I want to update this so I can use it again. Stick around. This is my Dolly. You can get it at the hardware store. It's just a few boards with some wheels on it, and then you can put some plywood on top of that. And you have yourself a Dolly where you can move your furniture around easily. There are a lot of cleaners out there, fancy, expensive ones, but really all you need is vinegar and water. Just measure out 1 part vinegar to 1 part water. That's all you need. When I turned over the table, I realized that the legs were attached to the scallop skirting around the top. So I had to take the legs off along with the scallop skirting, and that left me with just one single board. I had to buy new legs, and there were a few possibilities, but first I needed to get all of these screws out and make sure that I didn't take anything apart that didn't need to come apart, but it turned out that everything was attached. So obviously I did take everything apart. This wood was very scratched up. So I started with 100 grit sandpaper, and even that turned out to be a little bit too rough. After all, pine is very soft and it really wasn't going to take much to take off this finish. So I backed off and went to a 120, which turned out to be perfect. And as you can see, it was taking off the finish pretty quickly. There was a lot of vibration going on moving that board around from my sander, so I put a clamp on the end there and that held it in place. After I finished with the 120, I put on some mineral spirits. And what the mineral spirits does is it raises the grain. I let it dry, and now I'm putting on a 220 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to sand off anything that might have created any kind of scratches or swirlies. And this should leave me with a very smooth finish, ready for stain. So if you find that you have used a grit that maybe perhaps is a little too harsh and you're getting swirlies or scratches, you can stop, use some mineral spirits, raise the grain, and try a higher grit, which means it's a finer grit, and go from there. That should get rid of your scratches and your swirlies. I could have stained the whole thing, which meant that I would have had to sand down to the raw wood on the edges, on the sides. And that was going to be a bit of a problem because it might have been a little bit more uneven. And I just felt like perhaps it would just be easier to paint the sides and paint the bottom so that the piece looked completely finished. Of course, in order to paint the sides, I had to get off that top finish So I still had to sand, but I hand sanded, and I didn't have to be as careful because I was going to paint it. I also sanded the bottom because I wanted to paint that as well. And there was some sticky stuff on there. Who knows what that was? But I got that all off, and then I was able to paint the bottom and the sides with the Cobblestone by Fusion Mineral. I started this project with a water-based stain, the Hickory color, which is a kind of reddish. Pine is a pill. It is a difficult wood to stain, and of course the mineral spirits helps, but I probably would have benefited if I had put another layer of mineral spirits on after I sanded. It would have just helped the stain soak in a little bit better. I put on a second color. It's a water-based antique oak, and that helped a little bit, but I'm feeling like I need to go back to the oil base, and I was having trouble getting the stain on the paint, and because it's water-based it doesn't come up with mineral spirits, so it was a back and forth. I had to sand the stain off the paint, and then I got the paint on the stain. A disaster. I should have used tape in the first place. So once I got that taken care of, I sanded off the stain, and then I used mineral spirits where I could. Now it's time for the legs. The first thing you want to do with the legs is you want to make sure that they are in the right place on all four corners. And because this is just such a small piece of wood, I could eyeball it easily. And I just marked it with my pencil so that I could go back and pre-drill each of these holes. And then when I put in the screws, it would be easy peasy. Quick word of warning, when you have such a thin piece of wood you're working with and you're going to drill into it, make sure that the screws are not going to go through. And what you want to do with your drill bit is use a piece of tape on your drill bit so you know when to stop drilling. It's a good little trick that my husband taught me, and it works every time. Since you're putting multiple screws into one piece of hardware, you want to screw in the screws just a little so that you have a little wiggle room, so you can make sure that all of those holes line up with the spots that you marked. That way you're not having to unscrew it and screw it again, and you can get it right the first time. I had some ideas about what kind of legs I wanted to buy, but they turned out to be too expensive. So I went with a hairpin, and I found them on Amazon. They had been returned, so they were cheaper. I actually got them for $30, which seems like a lot, but there were 4 and they're long. Be sure to shop around, look for deals. You never know what you're going to find. This was a minimalist project. There isn't much left, but it is an effective piece. It's still functional, and it doesn't take up much room, and it's a cool piece to look at. So I think I succeeded in what I wanted to do. I did want a second shelf. I did want to buy different legs than I bought, but the ones that I wanted were way too expensive. So I went with the hairpin legs, which I also like, but I had to eliminate the second shelf. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices, but that's the way it goes. You can't always have everything you want, so you have to learn to compromise. One more thing. I painted around the edge and I stained the top. I always say paint first and then stain, and I hold to that. The only problem was I was in such a hurry because I wanted to finish this project quickly, and I didn't tape the top when I painted the sides. Therefore, I got paint on the top. It's going to happen, especially if you're using a roller. No matter how careful you are, it's going to happen. So I had to go back, and I went that back and forth thing. So I stained the top, and then I got stain on the paint. So then I had to sand the paint, and it went back and forth. So I would say don't skip that step. I should listen to my own advice. I'm always in such a hurry, and I preach take your time. So I'm going to try really hard in the next few weeks and all next year. Maybe that should be my New Year's resolution. Take your time. Thanks for being here. See you next time.
You can do it.
Pay attention to the sound, the one that's coming from your mouth. Don't mean to turn it upside down. I really wanna hear you out. I can't know how it is to be where you so calmly sit. When I'm further my own, there it is, catching only part of it.
Hey, thanks for watching my video. You can find more videos just like this on my YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe.